Will the House come to order, please? Delegates, please come to order. Welcome to the 16th Annual ACMUN Conference. We thank you for joining us, especially this year. We appreciate and admire everyone's commitment to MUN despite the difficulties that all of us are facing. One of those difficulties being the transition into virtual classes, a virtual life, and hence a virtual MUN conference. With that said, we would kindly ask you to stay connected to the call and show understanding in case we face any technical difficulties. Now that this is settled, I would like to invite Dr. Panos Vlachos, the president of Anatolia College, to welcome you to the first and hopefully the last virtual ACMUN. Dr. Vlachos, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good morning to all. Welcome to Anatolia. On behalf of all of us at Anatolia College, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our honored guests, the Consul General of the United States in Thessaloniki, Elizabeth Lee, and our guest speaker, Dr. Roxana Cristale, an alumna class of 2004, who is an assistant professor at the University of St. Andrews. I would also like to recognize all of you, the hundreds of delegates and advisors participating here at the 16th Anatolia College Model United Nations, our 9th conference affiliated with the Hague International Model UN, and our first ever virtual MUN conference, as was just mentioned. We are joined by delegates from all over Greece, but we are also excited to welcome others from 5 additional countries. We thank you all for participating. I believe you should all feel privileged to join this amazing group of people who prioritize the discussion of global affairs. And unfortunately, there is an abundance of issues that challenge today's society. The unprecedented health crisis, climate change and the usage of scarce resources, the need to better understand and to regulate the role of biotechnology and artificial intelligence are just new challenges to society. We all understand that our future truly depends on you, on those who are passionate and prepared to confront the challenges that we'll continue to face as a global community. So I invite all of you to take full advantage of this opportunity to participate in stimulating debates and to collaborate on writing resolutions for a variety of other issues. Such an engagement can only help you develop as well-informed citizens of the world who not only strive for an active understanding of the political climate in their respective nations, but also understand how a nation's decision can affect politics both on a local and global scale. We all see that we live in turbulent and uncertain times, so we can only hope that your generation will be more successful in addressing the global complexities we now face. And we could not be more excited about the things we hope you'll accomplish in the future. In closing my short remarks, I would like to congratulate the organizing committee and all of my colleagues for their excellent work in preparing this conference, particularly in their efforts with a new virtual format. I know that they have spent countless hours to make this happen. So my best wishes to all for a productive and successful weekend. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll enjoy every moment of this virtual experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vlachos, for your welcoming and encouraging speech. Honorable guests, dear ambassadors and delegates, student officers, members of the press, welcome to the 16th Annual Anatolia College Model United Nations. It's an honor and a joy for me to be presiding one of the most prestigious and meaningful conferences in Greece, along with my dear fellow Secretariat members, Mr. Kraniotis, the Secretary General, and Mr. Karanasios, the Deputy Secretary General, Ms. Goridari, the Deputy President of the General Assembly, and Mr. Economou, the Assistant to the Secretariat. The Deputy President, Deputy Secretary General, and Assistant to the Secretariat will now proceed with the roll call. So ambassadors, please press the space bar in your keyboard to temporarily unmute your mics and state your presence when your delegation is called.
We'll begin with the Delegation of Afghanistan.
Present.
Algeria.
Present.
Argentina.
Present.
Armenia. Armenia? No. Australia.
Present.
Austria.
Present.
Azerbaijan.
Present.
Bangladesh.
Present.
Belgium. Nope, no Belgium. Brazil.
Present.
And
Bulgaria,
Present.
Cameroon,
Present.
Canada,
Present.
Chile,
Present.
China,
Present.
Colombia,
Present.
Croatia,
Present.
Cyprus,
Present.
Czech Republic,
Present.
Denmark, Delegate of Denmark,
Present.
Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic. Delegate of the Dominican Republic. DPR Korea.
Present.
DR Congo.
Present.
Egypt.
Present.
Estonia.
Present.
Ethiopia.
Present.
Finland. Delegate of Finland.
Present.
France.
Present.
Georgia.
Present.
Germany.
Present.
Delegate of Greece.
Present.
Delegate of Hungary.
Present.
Delegate of India.
Present.
Delegate of okay. Very well. Delegate of Indonesia.
Present.
Delegate of Iran.
Present.
Iraq. Delegate of Iraq? No. Ireland. Delegate of Ireland.
Present.
Delegate of Israel.
Present.
Delegate of Italy.
Present.
Delegate. Very well. Delegate of Japan.
Present.
Kazakhstan, Delegate of Kazakhstan, Delegate of Kazakhstan, are you with us? No? Kuwait, Delegate of Kuwait, Latvia,
Present. Present.
Lebanon,
Present.
Libya,
Present.
Lithuania,
Present.
Luxembourg, Delegate of Luxembourg, Luxembourg, Malta, okay, Mexico,
Present.
Myanmar,
Present.
The Netherlands. Delegate of the
Present.
Netherlands. New Zealand.
Present.
Niger. Delegate of Niger. Nigeria.
Present.
Norway. Delegate of Norway. Pakistan.
Present.
Philippines.
Present.
Poland.
present,
Portugal.
Present.
Delegate of Qatar.
Present.
Delegate of the Republic of Korea.
Present.
Delegate of Romania.
Present.
Delegate of the Russian Federation.
Present.
Delegate of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines.
Present.
Delegate of Saudi Arabia.
Present.
Delegate of Singapore.
Present.
Delegate of Slovakia.
Present.
Delegate of Slovenia.
Present.
Delegate of South Africa.
Present.
Delegate of Spain.
Present.
Delegate of Sweden,
Present.
Switzerland,
Present.
Syrian Arab Republic,
Present.
Thailand,
Present.
Tunisia, Delegate of Tunisia, okay, Turkey,
Present.
Ukraine, Delegate of Ukraine, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates,
Present.
United Kingdom,
Present.
United States of America,
Present.
Delegate of Venezuela.
Present.
Delegate of Vietnam,
Present.
Delegate of Yemen.
Present.
Since we have a full house, it's truly an honor to now present the U.S. Consul General in Thessaloniki, Ms. Elizabeth K. Lee. Ms. Lee is a career member of the Foreign Service with over 13 years experience as a foreign policy leader, manager, and negotiator on a diverse range of regions and issues, including the Middle East, East Asia, and the United Nations Security Council. Previous assignments include the U.S. embassies in Seoul and Baghdad, the former U.S. Consulate General in Jerusalem, the U.S. mission to the United Nations in New York City, and the Israel and Palestinian Affairs Desk at the State Department in Washington, D.C. Ms. Lee, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. President Vlachos, Consular Corps colleagues, Anatolia College community, distinguished delegates, and guests. So thank you for giving me the opportunity today to greet the 16th Annual Model United Nations Conference here at Anatolia College. I'd like to welcome the 18 school delegations from Greece, Cyprus, Poland, Turkey, and Israel, and of course, from the United States of America. It gives me great pleasure to see you all here today to learn about the United Nations, as well as the art and the practice of multilateral diplomacy. I also participated in the Model United Nations program during high school, and it was excellent practice, I have to say, for years later, when I served as an actual negotiator at the US mission to the United Nations under both Ambassadors Samantha Power as well as Nikki Haley. Over the course of 3 years, I led negotiations on a wide range of issues in the Security Council and the General Assembly, including the Colombia Peace Agreement, women, peace and security, as well as many of our counter-ISIS efforts in Iraq. My experiences at the UN made me a better diplomat overall, and also deepened my belief in the power and the importance of multilateral diplomacy. I learned so much from my colleagues that I worked with every day, whether they worked at the UN, were negotiators from other missions, as well as those in my own mission. And I was inspired by their collective commitment towards a more peaceful and secure world. So today, I wanted to share with you 3 takeaways from my experiences that I hope you'll find useful in your own negotiations moving forward. Number 1, in all diplomacy, but especially in multilateral negotiations, relationships are critical. You may have a radically different stance than another national representative's position, but you can and must still maintain an excellent working relationship with him or her. Positions are not the same thing as people, and maintaining an open, respectful, and positive line with your counterpart will ease finding a way forward when a negotiation reaches an impasse. Secondly, there's a coffee shop on 45th Street, for those of you who are familiar with New York, between 1st and 2nd Avenue, called Penny Lane, and it makes an excellent latte, I must say. I think that nearly every negotiation of mine truly began there, and I don't think I was alone. If you can, take the time to meet separately with key actors beforehand to get a preview of their positions. I know that's difficult in this virtual environment, but if there's a way to do that, I would recommend it, especially those who you suspect may oppose your position, but also those who may support it as well. And finally, be open to making unexpected allies when your positions align, even on narrow and discrete issues. This is how negotiations happen in real life as well. So I want to leave you now with a hopeful message in the words of one of our former secretaries of state. We are blessed to be the descendants of innovators, of doers, people who overcame slavery, plagues, global conflicts, depressions, fascism, totalitarianism, and the Holocaust. So now it is our turn. And now it's your turn as well. Distinguished delegates of the 16th Annual MUN Conference in Anatolia, thank you very much. And I wish you a wonderful event where you'll not only learn more about diplomacy and hone your diplomatic skills, but also teach and inspire each other and yourselves. Thank you.
Ms. Lee, thank you so much for being here, giving negotiating advice to young people, and thank you for your inspiring speech. We would now like to present a pre-recorded interview with Dr. Roxana Cristale regarding her inspiring career, her globally recognized blog titled Stories of Conflict and Love, and her perspective on our General Assembly topic, Reproductive Rights in Light of International Population. Dr. Cristale is an assistant professor at the University of St. Andrews School of International Relations. Her research and teaching explore various dimensions of feminist peace and conflict studies, as well as the politics of nature and place. She's particularly interested in questions of narrative and storytelling in international politics. Her writing has appeared in the International Feminist Journal of Politics, the European Journal of International Relations, the Oxford Handbook of Gender on Gender and Violence, the Companion to Peace and Conflict Fieldwork, and other academic journals, as well as in many media outlets and blogs. She writes essays on home, memory, and loss at Stories of Conflict and Love. Ms. Cristale has spent a decade working as a practitioner in the humanitarian field, focusing on the intersection of gender, justice, and violence, and she regularly advises international organizations on these issues. She holds a bachelor's degree from Harvard University and a master's and PhD from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Born and raised in Thessaloniki, Greece, she now lives in Dunblane, Scotland. That said, Dr. Cristale is not an exceptional keynote speaker just because of her outstanding career and kindness. She's also one of the founding members of our conference, and the reason why we're gathered here today, 16 years after the first ACMUN. Even though she couldn't attend the ceremony due to time differences, we are all thankful for her continued support and love towards ACMUN. This is our interview.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to the 16th Anatolia College Model United Nations. I am delighted to open this meeting and to welcome you all to it. My name is Roxana Cristale, and I had the joy of being there for the very first Anatolia College Model United Nations as a member of the Secretariat. I find particular joy in the fact that this conference is continuing in pandemic times. And while I'm very sad that we cannot gather in person and have this exchange in person, I also have deep faith that these conversations are more necessary than ever before. So I commend you for coming together in spite of the times and despite the challenges that we're all facing right now. And I'm also holding a lot of hope that you can still have engaging, interesting, productive conversations about the issues we all care about. We certainly need the energy, the ideas, the commitment of young people to propel us forward through dark times. And I look forward to hearing what comes out of your conversations and hopefully to getting to cross paths with many of you in the future. Until then, welcome and thank you for having me join you for this part of the meeting.
Thank you so much for agreeing to interview with us. It's a great honor to be meeting with you and be interviewing you, especially since you started the MUN tradition at our school. And since you were in the first secretariat, and I would like to ask you whether the skills and the different perspective you gained through your MUN experience helped shape your future experience in humanitarian missions and interactions, and if so, how?
Absolutely. So as Eleni, the president of the General Assembly for this conference, knows, I have worked for the past 13 years as a peace building and humanitarian practitioner all over the world, most recently and most in depth in Colombia in support of the Colombian peace process. And I trace the seeds of those interests to Model UN. Model UN taught me what it means to care deeply about questions that go beyond and outside myself, and beyond and outside the small Greek city in which I was raised. And that care, that internationalization of care, and the fact that care requires negotiation, the fact that different countries and different representatives for those countries interpret international obligations, international rules, international values differently, and therefore need to talk about them, really paved the way for my subsequent career.
Thank you so much for your response. So I would actually like to talk a little bit about your work. Other than your humanitarian work, you actually have a very successful blog called Conflict and Violence. So on that matter, why do you think that it disproportionately affects women, and what role do women and men alike have in responding to and reshaping that narrative?
Absolutely. So as Eleni just said, I work in different capacities. So some of my time I work as an academic at the University of St. Andrews, where I'm an assistant professor teaching on these questions of feminism and global politics that Eleni just raised. Some of my time I'm a peace building practitioner, so having my feet on the ground as part of those peace processes. And a lot of the time I'm a storyteller within and beyond the academy about these questions of gender, conflict, peace, and justice. And one of the questions I'm often asked, as Eleni just raised, is why does gender matter? What do we lose without a gender perspective to international politics? So without a gender perspective, we do not understand the different forms in which violence affects people. And I'm not here just speaking about sexual violence or violence that is obviously gendered. I'm also talking about how does displacement affect men and women and children differently? How does a land dispossession, being forced to move off your land, have gendered effects? How does forced disappearance have gendered effects? Without understanding those gender dimensions, we're not able to craft policies and practices that fully respond to the variety of people's experiences. So I suppose the key takeaway here is that gender analysis is not about politeness. It's not just about being diplomatic. It's not about ticking boxes. It's about understanding the people of different genders and races and ethnicities and socioeconomic classes experience the world in general and conflict in particular differently in ways that our policies and practices need to take into account.
Thank you so much for your response. Seeing that you have so much experience in the humanitarian field and in the field of teaching as a professor and questioning gender, as you said, what is the most valuable lesson you've learned through your interactions with women who have experienced oppression or gendered violence? And how could that lesson be applied to our everyday lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Eleni. I do a lot of work with people who identify as victims of war, some of whom also identify as survivors of war. And one of the things that I have learned, particularly, but not exclusively from the women, is the importance of asking questions that go beyond violation. So much of the work of the United Nations and of model United Nations is centered on violation, on harms, on understanding the effects of oppression. And that is really important, critical work. But from a storytelling point of view, it sometimes flattens people's experience. It summarizes people as they're suffering. And what I have learned, particularly in Colombia, from women who identify as victims of the war, is that their losses, the harms they suffered, coexist alongside sites of care, alongside sources of joy, alongside the ways they find beauty and look after each other and sustain each other. And I think if we're going to respond to those harms and engage with them meaningfully, we also need to ask questions about and document joy, care, and thriving in those spaces as well.
Thank you so much for this lesson. We'll all try to incorporate it into our lives. Thank you for your words. So regarding our GAE issue, it's also then rooted in gendered violence, unfortunately. And the issue we are tackling this year is the question of reproductive rights.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think, in your experience, some people may underscore a woman's right of choice? Does it have to do with the value of human life, or is it a result of our gender norms and stereotypes around motherhood?
Yeah, what an important and complicated question you're all tackling. And this is a question a lot of people care deeply about, which is why the issue is tense to begin with. I would offer two suggestions in how to think through it. First of all, reproductive choice has to do with the organization of someone's life. It is not just about reproduction, just about child rearing or caregiving. It has to do with time, with resources, with responsibilities, not just for the child, but for the whole family, the household, and the people who care about them. So if we look at this issue of reproductive choice as going beyond the right to abortion, to encompass the choices people make about how to structure their lives, where to find meaning, and what to prioritize given their respective circumstances, I think we may be able to approach it more compassionately. And secondly, I would suggest that we do not all approach the sources of meaning in life the same way. So when delegates are making statements like all women want to be mothers, or all women ought to feel a certain way, or indeed that abortion is just a woman's issue, I encourage us to broaden our understanding of who cares about this issue. Who are the actors who should be part of this conversation, beyond just the woman herself and beyond our interpretation of what a woman should want, to a broader gender systemic analysis of what reproductive choice means for shaping a life.
Thank you so much for your insightful answer. I'm sure it will help all our delegates and ourselves understand this very complex, as you said, issue. The stories of violation of human reproductive or other rights are narratives of misinterpreted, oppressed women and men alike in both more economically and less economically developed backgrounds. Taking into account your research about feminist theories and global politics, why do you think that many people are in denial when it comes to the need of feminism in the 21st century, despite the extensive level of gender inequality and issues we're experiencing, as you mentioned in your previous responses?
What a great question. And I wish we had an hour to talk about it. As you said, I teach a class called Feminist Theories in Global Politics, and we spend a whole semester taking on the really important question that you just asked. So I'll just give you a flavor, a teaser, acknowledging the limitations of what I could cover in such a short time. I would say, first of all, when we think feminism is a historical issue, that we needed it in the 1960s and 1970s, but we don't anymore, we need to go back to the definition of feminism. Bell Hooks, who's one of the feminists I most admire, defines feminism as the struggle to end sexist oppression. Notice that her definition doesn't say anything about women or men as being the actors or subjects of feminism. It's about the struggle to end sexist oppression. So to anyone who says, well, we needed feminism then, but not now, I would ask, do you really think sexist oppression has ended? And if so, how do you make sense of all the ways it still manifests in people's daily lives, as the delegates will talk about throughout the conference? And the second thing I would say to people who resist feminism these days is to interrogate what they are afraid of. What are you afraid feminism will take from you or not allow you to experience? And is it possible for you to consider that a more equitable, a more just world, a world in which we are more honest about not just sexist oppressions, but also racist and classist and homophobic and xenophobic oppressions, is a better world, not just for the marginalized, but for everyone who lives in it?
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and sharing your perspective, especially about feminism and our GA topic. We really appreciate this interview and your responses. And on behalf of the entirety of the Secretariat and the ACMUN Organizing Committee, we would like to say the biggest thank you.
I'm the grateful one. I'm so lucky to be part of this conversation, and I wish I were there in person so I could overhear your debates over the coming days. But I wish you the best of luck, and I'm so glad to have been part of this.
We would like to thank Dr. Cristale once again for her insightful responses on matters of gendered violence, violation of reproductive and other human rights, and her inspirational words on how we can rise up and address the challenge of gender inequalities our world has been facing for centuries. I would now like to proudly present the Secretary General, Dimitris Kraniotis, for his speech on democracy. Dimitris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. The year is 1793. Paris is lit ablaze with the flames of revolution. Men and women flood the streets, storming palaces and prisons on their path to democracy. The head of a king rests on a pike, and the shackles of monarchy, long weighing down upon the weak, are finally shattered. The year is now 1940. German panzers flood the streets. Resistance fighters are put to death before firing squads, while unwanteds, as they were characterized, are shipped to death camps. From the ashes of democracy rises tyranny and hopelessness. At last, the year is 2018. The yellow vests now flood the streets of Paris. Monuments are desecrated, and innocents die on the streets in the name of fighting economic injustice. The story of Paris reflects the course of democracy, the sacrifices necessary for its survival, and the enemies we make in defending it. Before I delve deeper into the contents of my speech, let me take some time to acknowledge before all of you the difficulties and obstacles you have all struggled against in the tiresome journey leading up to this long-awaited day. We live in trying times as the waves of a global catastrophe of unprecedented proportions smash against the foundations of modern civilization, threatening to cast all rhyme and reason aside while claiming countless souls. We have persevered. We have fought through hardship and confusion, and now we are all gathered here in this glorious celebration of democracy and unity. Your presence here, let alone what you are set to accomplish through discussion and debate in the ensuing days, is evidence enough of the human spirit's endurance in the face of evil and chaos. And though I am proud to have played some part in erecting this monument to the brotherhood of peoples, I stand in admiration of every single one of you. You have all exhibited incredible discipline, strength of will, and indeed character. Though this conference has always served as a beacon of hope, it would seem that around our beam of light, shadows gather. Our world, for all its flaws, for all the evils that scar it, and the atrocities that blacken the pages of its history, has always depended on the insatiable pursuit of freedom and the unsakable aspiration towards liberty in its march forward. These qualities shine through on rare, in fact, incredible occasions in history. Athens, Florence, Washington, these bastions of democracy were built on a foundation of blood, sweat, and bone. It was because the people who sacrificed everything to protect and nurture them were brave enough to face the fire on freedom's front that we have the luxury to be here today. And yet, as I look upon an ungrateful earth, inappreciative of the price paid across the centuries to grow the humble seed of democracy into a grand tree, whose roots bury deep into the hearts of many a nation and whose branches stretch the length of civilization itself, I catch a glimpse of a figure ready to take an axe to the bark of this great tree. This axe swings by force of memory, a lack of memory to be precise. From the beaches of Normandy to the shores of Marathon, from the fields of Flanders to the passage of Thermopylae, from cold valley fords to blood-soaked Okinawa, we have let the memory of sacrifice and tyranny fade. We have made this terrible mistake before, a vile cycle of destructive repetition which has threatened democratic governance with extinction a myriad times, conquistadors pillaging their way across a virgin continent, and Nazi shock troopers erecting factories of death. These are but few of the horrors we risk reliving should we continue on our path of disinterest in history. Julius Caesar, a man synonymous with the usurpation of democratic power, had a few things to say about the fragility of democratic institutions that I find most descriptive of the modern world, and I quote, "And when the drums of war have reached a fever pitch, and the blood boils with hate, and the mind is closed, the leader will have no need in seizing the rights of the citizenry. Rather, the citizenry, so infused with fear and blinded by patriotism, will offer up all of the rights unto the leader and do it gladly so. As for the first time in 200 years, nations bred in the womb of dictatorship and authoritarianism rise to prominence in world affairs and ready themselves to dethrone a decaying West, with China buying up East Africa and refusing to abide by the global rules of trade, while Russia bullies Eastern Europe. The drums of war are most certainly approaching a fever pitch. As long-thought dead ideologies return to the political scene, feeding off of fear and ignorance, be it around immigration or tradition, the blood of nations is most certainly boiling. As the truth is questioned to the point of irrelevance and political perspectives assume the character of religious dogmas, the minds of people are closing. Caesar destroyed democracy in Rome, but he was not alone in committing that heinous crime. The Romans are equally responsible. They stood by and let democracy die. It would remain dead for millennia because they forgot of the foundation of sacrifice and struggle on which their republic was built. I implore you, look to the past, never forget it. Arm yourselves with its failures and its successes, and always remember, the only path to a bright future passes through the darkest reaches of our past. Welcome to ACMUN 2020, everyone.
Thank you so much for addressing the elephant in the room of global politics, the democratic decay, and reminding us of the people who sacrificed themselves for democracy. This concludes our opening ceremony. I would now like to officially declare the 16th Annual Anatolia College Model United Nations officially open. I kindly ask the delegates go to our platform and click on the Join Meeting button in their committee's forum to access their committee's meeting. We wish you all a fruitful and exciting debate and we will see you soon.